Well, hello. It's Friday afternoon and the sun's shining. It's quite a lovely day here at Glaston Park today, and I've just stopped to have a cup of tea. I must be honest, I'm parched, so excuse me. I wanted to talk to you today again about dogs and books and things that I get asked about. What books do I recommend? And what do I use myself? So I should have done this before I started, so bear with me for a minute. Okay, I'm back with you again. Sorry about that. As I say, I should have done that before I started. When I had my first spaniel, I didn't know anything about training gun dogs. Father had Labradors, and he liked his Labradors. And when I came home with my first spaniel, he said to me, "You're bloody mad." That's what he said. That was his exact words. He said, "You will never train it. They're hard-headed, pig-headed. They won't listen to you. They've got a total will of their own, and quite frankly, they're just a damn nuisance." And I remember him saying to me that the old saying that a Labrador is born half trained and a Springer dies half trained is somewhere close to the mark. So I thought, well, I got to do something. I was given my first Springer. It came from a gamekeeper in his bitch that was nearby. And so in the village was a bookshop that I did my paper round from, called Helliker's. So I went up to Helliker's and saw Miss Helliker in the shop, and I said, "Do you have any books on training gun dogs?" And she said, "Well, I got one down there on the shelf, down the back in the right-hand corner." So I went down there and I bought this. And this was my book that got me started on Springers. Wonderful book, a wonderful book, and I still use it and still read it today. I never think that you're too old to learn, and shouldn't be too proud to ask if you need to know something. Recommend it as a read. Maurice Hopper, lovely chap. He was in the war, Second World War, of course, and he lost a leg. So when he sort of got himself over losing a leg, he went into training war dogs to start off with. And then from there, he went into training Springers. And that's a lovely picture of him there. And one of the Springers that he trains, or trained, should I say. So because he had only one leg, he had to try and work out the psyche of the Springer that he was training, or the dog that he was training, and then be able to master that. If you go back a fair way, there was a man called Carlson who wrote a book on breaking spaniels for sport. And that was back at the turn of the century. And back in those days, they used to break them too. They almost needed to, because they were so hard. It wasn't funny. But I learned a lot from this. And quite frankly, with this book in this hand and a lead in that hand, I trained my first Springer Spaniel. Fabulous read. Once again, absolutely super. Some pictures in here of some of the training methods and so on, of casting your dog side by side, and once again some lovely little Springer bitches that he was obviously working with. Look at this one at the top. Obviously has the most beautiful eye contact with him, which is wonderful, and that's what you need. So there you are, Maurice Hopper's Spaniel Training. Wonderful book. Recommend it. Next one. When I had been reading that and I started to get a little bit better at training Springers, in the Shooting Times was a man called Peter Moxon. And Peter Moxon was the gun dog editor for the Shooting Times magazine. And as I told you probably in a previous video, I used to save my pocket money from the paper round and buy a Shooting Times when I could afford it. And I used to write to the people in the back of the Shooting Times to ask me to send me their pedigrees of their dogs that had won in field trials. They always had write-ups of field and retrieving trials, and I used to write to them and ask them, care of the Shooting Times, amazing how the letters ever got there, but they did, if they would be kind enough to send me some information on the dogs and their pedigrees and so on. And through the pedigrees, I tried to work out what the common factor was as to why that particular dog was better than something else. All this spaniel thing is just a hobby that's got out of hand, quite frankly. I think as I'm getting older, it's getting worse. But, so Peter Moxon wrote a couple of books, and the one that I purchased, which is absolutely super, is Training the Rough Shooter's Dog by Peter Moxon. Once again, I mean, it's just full of no-nonsense common sense. And, oh, look, I've just found a piece of paper in here folded up. I wonder what that is. Oh, look at this. How wonderful. Gun Dog Training in Brief. Sitting to Command, the Kingpin of Training. How very true is that? By Peter Moxon. The Shooting Times magazine, February the 11th to the 17th, 1988. Well, I was here in Australia then, so I must have still been taking the Shooting Times from England at that stage. And fabulous book. Fabulous book. P.R.A. Moxon's Training the Rough Shooter's Dog. You could probably buy all these on eBay these days. I'd be surprised if you couldn't. Another book which I'm a bit of a bibliophile, I'm afraid. I have all books on all sorts of subjects, ranging from bumblebees to fishing nymphs and flies and deer and badgers and all sorts of things. But this is a lovely little book, and it is a lovely book, actually. It's written by Joe Irving, who, if you wanted to start with a young dog, you could well and truly go a long way to try and find something better than this. No nonsense, common sense, lovely, beautifully written, illustrations, photographs, a little bit dated, of course, in the dress, but then again, I suppose I still dress like that when you think about it. But yes, just a lovely, lovely book. And I've just turned to this page completely by chance, and I must show you because that is typical, and that's why we have roofs on our kennels, because they're complete escapists. They really are. And if they didn't have a roof on the kennel, they'd be over the top in no time. Anyway, back to books. Joe Irving, Training Spaniels. Very, very, very good indeed. Last, certainly not least, and I've got several of his books here um, on my shelves. I just happened to pick this one up. The Working Springer Spaniel by a hero of mine when I was growing up, Keith Erlandson. Keith Erlandson was probably one of the greatest spaniel trainers of his time. And not only was he a Springer Spaniel man, he also helped to resurrect the working Cocker Spaniel, which was in absolute dire straits, nearly died out back in the late 50s, early 60s, and so on, I suppose. And a lot of the resurrection of the Cocker, and let's be perfectly honest about it, they are so popular now that you truly need to be careful what you're buying, because everybody's got on the bandwagon because they're so bloody popular. But absolutely marvellous, a marvellous man. I used to write to him as a young lad, and he always wrote back to me, bless him. I'm finding little treasures in here that Lord above. That goes back to 2003. A friend of mine in England, Dave Templar, picture of his dog at stud and the pedigree next to it. Very knowledgeable indeed, Keith Erlandson. He was a judge, he was a trialer, he was one of the old school, I suppose, and he had top dogs like Cortman Lane and Hale Smut and those sorts of dogs that, if you go back into our pedigrees far enough, you will find those dogs there. Absolutely. This is a picture of Cortman Lane retrieving a rabbit to Keith Erlandson. He lived in North Wales on a very steep mountainous property, and he had the most wonderful dogs. I never ever got to meet the man, although he and I used to communicate, as I say, as a little lad. And I was talking 13, 14 years old. I would write to him and ask him all sorts of questions, and bless his heart, he would write back to me and give me all the information plus a swag more about what I was, asking about. And then later in life, when I came out here, we used to communicate by fax backwards and forwards in those days, which seems so wonderfully modern to send a fax and receive one. Of course, today it is absolutely, most of the kids today wouldn't know what a fax was. But yeah, terrific, wonderful, wonderful. Any of these writers are worth a read, and that is certainly worth a read. The Working Springer Spaniel by Keith Erlandson. And I think it's in the back of this one that he does a rundown of the... Yes, he does. He does a rundown of the dogs that won the Spaniel Championship and what he thinks of the dog. I mean, here, for example, I'll read this to you. In 1977, the winner of the Spaniel Championship was a dog called Ashley Buster, a very nice dog who had the lot and dead easy to handle. Sired 5 field trial champions, one being a championship winner. Did a lot of good for the breed. So, 1978, Cleo of Coppiswood, a good class bitch, very well handled, but could be hot in a shooting situation, according to her owner, who did not handle her in the trials. Not a successful brood bitch. So a lot of people would probably find that completely boring, but to a poor old spaniel tragic like me, it's just like nectar to the gods, I suppose. Yeah. 1986, Cortman Lane, a brother to Gary, had enormous quality and was dead honest. His only fault being that he needed an experienced hander to hold him onto his ground. The only dog over this period, besides Markdown Muffin, who was a prepotent sire, with 7 British Field Trial champions sired and possibly more in the pipeline. Also has sired a whole generation of good, trainable shooting dogs. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I was reading somewhere that there is a dog in England, and we won't mention any names, that you see in every pedigree or modern pedigree today, and out of which he's sired 418 puppies altogether, and he's meant to be very good because 14 of them achieve field trial champion status. I'll leave you with that thought. Have a very nice, great day. Thank you for indulging me. All the very best. Bye-bye.